Alert meteorologist Jennifer Zeppelin along with Ryan McPike, and this is something everybody has been talking about. I think more so than any time of the year, this is the one that we start getting the most comments or questions. When is the winter weather forecast coming out? What are you guys predicting? Give me a heads up. Let me know now.
For like 6 weeks it's been like that. And
it has.
We did this last night, so you may have already seen this at 10 o'clock. We're going to expand a little bit and get into a little more detail, obviously engage with you live with comments. And probably get into a lot more description with this. We were up against the clock a little bit last night. You can only imagine, just to let you know a secret, the first cut I think was about 3.5, 340. The second cut, I think we were 3 something. We finally got it down to our target 240.
About 240.
So we got a lot more time.
We've got a lot of information that we want to get out there. We want to be able to expand our overall perspective on what we think is going to happen this winter season. And this is a couple of maps that we've been showing, and we've been showing this for quite some time because the national forecasts have been out there. You've probably seen this all across the board from every vendor, every weather vendor that's out there, from the Farmer's Almanac to you name it, it's been there. So again, at AccuWeather, the Weather Channel, it's all been out there. So the big thing though is that this is kind of one of those that just puts us in the middle of everything. We're sandwiched in between the equal chances, below normal chances to above normal chances of not only temperatures, but even precipitation. So this really doesn't tell us a whole lot as far as what we expect at the winter season. And that's where we've been waiting. And I know a lot of folks go, okay, so why are you waiting until the middle part of November? Well, because the pattern, and this is something that I want to really hone in on here, is that the pattern for the upcoming season, really for the next several months, doesn't start to take hold here. A whole new setup starts kind of unveiling itself in early October as we go into the month of November, and really still a few more days to wrap up the month of November. But we've got some pretty clear signs right now.
We do.
As to which way it's swinging. And but after a very interesting October, with it being a wet one, to an abnormally or unseasonably dry and cool month of November, it does make the forecast a little more challenging and tricky. And then you add in some other elements.
A lot of variables, absolutely, a lot of stuff.
So we want to go ahead and fine tune that forecast for everybody.
We've been talking about basically this map's going to look similar to what Jim was saying with a lot of these national forecasts. This would be a traditional La Nina type weather pattern. We'll kind of get in and define La Nina again for you, what that has to do. But basically, we look at a couple of key jet streams. The southern branch is probably going to be a warm, dry one. That's why you see a lot of bright, warming colors over the southern United States. We're focused on where the cold air is going to be over the Pacific Northwest and when and where this jet's going to take some dips. Obviously, the flow, as Jim's saying, it's been setting up October, even this month. A very progressive northwesterly flow, which is going to mean a couple of things for us, but Mother Nature's kind of showing her hand with that. And if that pattern continues, it could lead us to our forecast, which we're pretty confident in. The problem is, do you get variables that throw that off and maybe raise that snow total a little bit? And that would be the #1 challenge to this, because it looks like we're definitely going to be colder than last year. We just got to see how much moisture can work into this system.
And that's going to be the biggest question mark. You know, will there be some wrinkles in there from time to time? And I think there definitely could be.
I believe so.
But this is the overall pattern. This was just updated just last week, so just a few days ago. And it did bring in a little more colder air further to the north, just north of us, in extreme northeastern Nebraska, northern Iowa, where this was lifted a little further to the north. So giving us some more signs that temperatures as we go through the winter months are definitely going to be at least trending a little bit cooler than normal in some cases, with some swings, which is something we've been seeing for quite some time. As far as precipitation, obviously that's one of the biggest things. This is altered just ever so slightly, with, again, the more moderate, at least, precipitation expected off to the north of us. And again, we're looking at just slightly above average, but mainly to the north of us. Now, it doesn't mean that we won't see some months throughout the winter that will be above average on total precipitation from the form of rain, snow, and ice combination together. But right now, we're sort of in that sort of in-between stage here in eastern Nebraska and western Iowa.
Absolutely. You said equal chance again. There's this little gap both with temperature and precip. The one correlation that's really interesting, remember the cold? It goes right in line with the wet, and then the warm and the dry, the exact same spot. So there's definitely a lot of correlation with those two type of winters. Maybe it's going to be a very snowy and cold one, if not here just north of us, probably northwest and northeast, and then obviously Arizona, New Mexico, the southern plains into Dixie, probably lacking moisture and staying warm. And Jen, the other thing that kind of comes into play with our forecast, these average snow totals, we broke those down month by month here.
We do, and so the total comes up to about February, where we're about 18 inches. So looking at the next 3 months, the 90-day outlook here, that's on average that we see about 18 inches. Now you go to last year. Last year was one of those you almost have to toss out because we were way below average, under about 3.5 inches, which is crazy. Our average snow total for an entire snow season is just a little under 26 inches, so just around 25.9 inches if you average it all out. And so we're below average going into this snow season, considering how we ended up this past snow season. And so at least at this point, signs are leading that it's going to be more than what we had last year.
And what isn't November usually a couple?
It is 2.5 inches.
We've had nothing so
We've had
far.
nothing. So
and March can be a wild card.
And we talked about this at the beginning of November, that we said that there was going to be below normal precipitation, below normal temperatures, even though we did have a warm day yesterday. We've
offset it today.
Just offset. And that's the kind of extremes that we're talking about, that we're going to see throughout the winter months, would be these big warm-ups and then these major cold snaps that will follow.
Very true. Yeah, so it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. The other thing with this that we have to figure in, and we'll get into this a little bit more, ice versus snow could keep snow totals down a little bit. So that's something, again, we'll break that down as we go on.
And we'll go by the monthly outlook here and show you too. So if you have any comments, some questions. Brett, are we getting some in here?
Oh, we got a few coming.
Okay, and that's good. So here's the deal. Keep liking, sharing, commenting, and we promise we will get to that. We want to get through the entire forecast first, and then we'll be able to provide you with at least comments. We'll go ahead and answer some of those comments.
And we're getting in a lot of detail.
We are. We're going to get into some more fine-tuning of and really sort of fine detail on this forecast here. So this is
it's like a weather conversation.
It is a weather conversation, and we love being able to work together because we work opposite schedules.
I know,
so it's always nice
to
do. So here is the current setup on La Nina, and that's the way, the direction everything seems to be going right now, leaning in that. It was more of a neutral year last year, where temperatures were either neither cooler or even warmer than normal. So it was kind of just benign, sort of just normal.
Shut all the precip off. That's
Shut it all off.
Barely any snow. So
again, a little bit of an alter in this, and you can tell that as we've been talking about, once again, just very similar to what we've just showed with the past couple of maps, that everything seems to be lining up with the coldest air to the north, and that precipitation will be more significant off to the north of us.
Yeah, and if you're a weather geek and you like to watch us here locally, the National Weather Service forecast, the Weather Channel, watch this part of the jet stream. If we tug that and it starts to dig down in the Four Corners region, that's usually, and again, especially if you get this, if we can move this back a couple states, you get the arc and then it swings out across parts of Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri, that's usually a snow track for us. So this jet stream, this northern polar jet's going to be very key as we pull in cold air, and that'd be the one that might open up the Gulf of Mexico for moisture, because you're going to see that in our forecast. It's a little bit of a concern. Look how dry we've been since the first 10, 12 days of October. I think we've had one decent round of moisture, but this month's been incredibly dry.
It has, October, the first 2 weeks was unbelievable.
Wet.
We were above average
for the whole month.
For the month of October, we got everything the first half of the month. And when you go back and look at that, the last time that we had anything like that, as far as above normal precipitation, you have to go back to March, earlier, of this year.
I didn't know it'd been that long.
So it's been several months. And so we've been more on a dry trend here over the last several months. And so that certainly throws a little wrinkle in things, but gives us at least something to think about and go, okay, there will be that potential event that will bring in a significant snow this winter season. And even with this setup, as Ryan was mentioning, as it drops further to the south, the big bullseye right now, I think, for the more significant icing and snow will be around Kansas City, down to the south, over parts of eastern Oklahoma and into Missouri and Arkansas. So this is going to be the area that will be dealing with some more significant, I think, concerns going into the winter season. So that pushes us, again, in the northern fringe of all of this, where the colder air, I think we will have more frequent events coming through. And a perfect indication of that is what we've been dealing with already this month. Multiple systems, one after another coming in, but with little to no precipitation.
Yeah, that's probably the first big point is moisture. That's going to have a lot to do with snow totals. will we see it? Because the last 6 weeks, it's been really lacking here.
It certainly has. So as we're talking about La Nina, here is the big scope showing the Atlantic Ocean, the Pacific Ocean, but the Pacific Ocean is obviously our key. You've got the trade winds, and it's an upwelling of cooler water, the sea surface temperatures, more so at the surface, at the ground levels, and it starts to either cool or it starts to warm. In our case this year, it's La Nina, which means little girl, and it also is about a pattern that runs at about 9 to 12 months. So we're at the early stages of this. So this is going to be a trend, or at least a pattern that we're going to see here for most of the year that's going to be impacting us and kind of puts us once again with below normal precipitation in general. And that might also feed into our severe storm season, something we'll obviously have more on, but that's going to have a huge impact on this. But you can tell that just within the last few days, La Nina is starting to show its signs of cooling, that dropping of the sea surface temperatures ever so slightly.
And if that keeps going, that could enhance not only cold, but snow. In fact, we're going to show you some years where we had a stronger La Nina and what that did to the snow total. So that is key number 2, as Jim was talking about, these Pacific Ocean waters, if they continue to get colder, and right now it's just a real slight one. It's just kind of developing. It's still pretty slight. But if this deepens and gets colder and colder and we go more negative, we'll see what happens. So that's a second big factor we're watching.
Okay, so the methods. How do we put this all together? What do we look at? I mean, so many different things, but La Nina really does have a huge impact on the overall pattern, what it's going to be doing here, as we just mentioned. A weaker one tends to mean less precipitation for us.
That's what we're looking at now.
In most cases. But as far as the overall cooling that takes place, the chances that we will still see some snow, unlike this past winter season, is rising. I mean, that chance is going up just because we are expecting colder air. So here are the last 12 years, really, when you look at the last 12 years and significant snow events, and I know one that you remember all too well is this El Nino event.
Yeah, 09, and I've been here, this is coming up on about my 20th year here at the station. 09, 2010, I remember very well. Now, that was a stronger El Nino. So we're talking the opposite thing. But when these patterns get stronger, they tend to have more adverse weather effects, especially across the central United States. You may remember this one. It was a top 5, and I'd have to look it up. It was a top 3 or top 5 in both categories, cold and snow. I remember we had, I believe, over 1 foot of snow on the ground for at least 3 months. I don't think we ever got above freezing for that stretch. We had many days where the highs were a little bit below 0. And the official total out at Eppley, and again, Eppley's not always the best representation of the rest of the city, was 47 inches. I think Valley had 60 or 62. I'd have to double check that. And even Bellevue was up over 50. So that was a 45 to 60, almost 5-inch winter. Obviously, it was one of the snowiest and coldest we'd seen. Another good one, this was, I can remember this one well, 03-04. That was a really bad one as well. And that, too, I can remember, if you remember this one, we'd had a little bit early. We had a Friday night. Don't ask me why I remember this stuff. I only remember these big snow events.
That's good. You should.
And there was a Friday afternoon. We hit 61 degrees at the very end of January. Within 10 days, we got, I believe, between 25 and almost 30 inches of snow. We had the 12 to 15-inch snowstorm right at the very end of January, February. There was another one that came in about 4 days later and another one a week after that. So it was about a 9, 10, 11-day period where we had almost, I want to say it was about 27 inches of snow. And again, that was a neutral year. So you just never know. Again, when we point out La Nina, and these are La Nina years, and you can see, and this is, Jen and I really looked at this, and Jen brought up a lot of points saying, a lot of them are kind of right in that 20 range. So it makes a lot of sense.
So below average. Again, as we mentioned earlier, about 25.9 average on our snowfall here for the season. And one that we want to just I want to bring up is the 05-06, because the last time that we didn't have snow in the month of November was back in 05-06.
And that's right.
So again, more than 10 years ago that we had no snow in the month of November. And right now, there are no signs of us seeing any snow. So this
there were hints, but it doesn't look like it's going to happen
so
now.
right now what it's trending towards is that the month of December, the latest snow that we've ever had, December the 10th, if I'm remembering my numbers correctly, that's the latest. We could be rivaling that. We're talking this is going to be one of the latest snowfalls that we're going to see here.
That's
so
crazy.
So it is crazy. And
drives snow lovers nuts.
It does. So there are some signs at the end of December, early January that might be when we could see some transition taking place here. but good signs of all of this. So 05, 06, 07, 08, again, the only one where we had a moderate La Nina was 10 and 11. And again, there's been numerous years that La Nina has impacted our weather, but we just wanted to give you the last 5 events, not the last 5 years, but the last 5 events, just to give you some ideas of what kind of snow totals that we can see during these types of events. So, and they have generally been below average, but more than what we've had. And if I remember correctly, looking at some of my numbers, there was only one that was really below average, about 13 inches, and that was decades ago. Okay. So on average, they've either been just slightly above or right around 20 inches or so.
So you're saying we're going to do a little better than our 11 or 12 we saw
I do. I feel much more confident on that as far as that. So here is just the breakdown on the La Nina years. So the three key things that we're looking at as far as what we're expecting this upcoming winter season is that we'll see slightly above average temperatures. Again, not nearly as warm as they were last year. I think we're seeing, because we're going to see some stronger shots of colder air, Arctic outbreaks that will be coming through. And along with that, as we've been mentioning, frequent fronts. But does not always mean, or is it going to materialize into significant snow events for us?
Well, we have moisture for those things to work with. The last 6 weeks say
not much.
Not so far. We haven't. Obviously,
the only big,
a lot of wind and clouds, but
the only big thing is what we had in early October. That is why I do think at some point we will see a couple of Arctic outbreaks. So talk about here, Ryan, as far as the monthly breakdown.
Just again, we're kind of going. We're going to show you a grand, accumulation of everything here, synopsis. This is just kind of a quick breakdown of where we may be headed. We actually think we may swing above a little bit, which might keep our snow closer to normal here for December, which is now, believe it, the snowiest month of the year. That's kind of flip-flop with new data based on the last 30 years of winters here. So that's interesting. It was always January until just last year or maybe a couple years ago. January 2 again, maybe a little bit above, although we do think, as Jim was saying, that into December, January timeframe, maybe as we get into the heart of winter there, we'd have a better chance to catch maybe one of those decent snowfall events. So we're looking at that. And then February, this is also a time where do we get snow versus ice a little bit.
Well, yes, and I think that will even be in the January forecast because of the above normal temperatures. That we'll end up seeing that breaking out a little bit more. And then I think in February, again, I think that the time frame, only because of what we ended up seeing in October, is that it was at the early part of the month, the first couple of weeks. Once again, I think in early February is when we could see that same type of setup. So you're talking early January, early February, that we could see some decent snow amounts, or at least pushing us to either closer to normal or slightly above normal.
And then if you've lived here for an extended period of time, March, I don't think we had anything last year. I've seen us get 2 major snowstorms since I've been here in 20 years, to the tune of about 30. So we'll see what happens. There was one year, my first year here, 98, we actually had a blizzard that produced 12 to 16 inches of snow, and then I think we had something else right before, right after that. It wasn't nearly as bad. But March can be very interesting, too, so that's the wild card. But really focusing on the pattern through the heart of the winter, and this is kind of what we came up with.
Yeah, and so colder than last year, but still slightly above average when you sort of factor in the fact that we're going to see some warming taking place, but then some Arctic outbreaks. So that will actually sort of average everything out between the morning lows and the afternoon high temperatures to slightly above normal as we go through the winter months. And then our snow forecast.
Well, 17 to 21, and this is really interesting because, one, it gets us up above where we were last year by about 6 inches.
Almost 10 in some cases, almost double.
and almost 6 to 10 below our normal, too. Now, the variables here, again, are we're really going to have to see snow versus ice, because you and I both think that we could get into more of an ice situation with this year. And, again, the number one thing it goes back to from 10 minutes ago, is there going to be moisture working into these fronts? So far, there hasn't been. The other thing I pointed out is watch that jet stream. If you're a weather geek like we are, watch that northern branch of the jet stream. It starts to dig over the Rockies and set up where it shoots out across the southern and central plains. That gets us the moisture. That gets us the storm track. We need to get snow, and then this could vary quite a bit. And I think we're going to kind of keep tabs on this again this year and come back and give you some updates and say, hey, it's still holding true. Here we are at the end of, or, maybe sometime in January right before February. Halfway through this prediction, we've got 6 inches of snow, or say, you know what? The pattern changed sometime in December, and we're sitting here with 3 feet. We'll see. It's always fun to predict these and see how they go.
It certainly is. And La Nina is going to be the biggest variable in all of this. If it becomes comes or strengthens and the cooling becomes more significant here over the next several weeks, that's when we'll obviously fine-tune this forecast, probably more so at the tail end of January, early February, that we will provide you with an update, kind of see where we're at right now, and let you know what we're expecting. But at least at this point, this is the current thinking, the current trend. So let's go ahead and start talking some of the comments and questions, finding out what our viewers want to know.
The number one question, we got asked this one like 3 times, is will there be a white Christmas?
Oh.
You know, interestingly
I'm
enough.
I'm going to say yes.
Interestingly enough, that when you look back over the Thanksgiving stats, which is basically not much in the snow department in Thanksgiving, and this Thanksgiving is going to be a really, really pleasant one. Winter time, though, during Christmas, on Christmas Eve to Christmas Day,
40%?
Yeah, it's a much higher percentage of seeing a white Christmas. Now, it all depends on what you think a white Christmas is.
Yes.
Is it snow on the ground, or is it that snow is falling? So,
right.
You know what? But either way, if you have snow on the ground, I still would consider that a white Christmas.
Yeah, and I think the Weather Service, where they come up with, I believe it's the 39 to 42%. It kind of varies each year whether we add or subtract a white Christmas. I believe you need an inch of snow on the ground officially to constitute that. But as Jen said, you know what? If you got some big flakes coming down and it's that aesthetic snow, then it's festive. So
it is festive.
It kind of depends on what you're looking for and what you define that.
There are some signs at the end of December of a transition taking place. Now, as we've said, there's been multiple systems. The biggest key is going to be, will we have the moisture to work with? And as Ryan was mentioning, the jet stream and those systems coming in one after another, at some point they're going to draw in some of that moisture from the Gulf of Mexico. We'll be on the northern fringes with the cold air, and all it does is take one system. So something that we'll be watching very closely, but the odds of it looking much higher going into this Christmas, that we could have some snow on that day.
And we're kind of thinking that the pattern flips a couple of times this winter, where you get maybe what I would say a 2 to 3 week cycle, or maybe even a 10 to 20 day cycle, where you can get a couple of storms like that, and then it may go dry for a month. So we'll see if that sets up too, because there's hints, kind of like we keep referencing early October, and obviously it was warm, it was rain, but man, we had a lot of it. It just like boom, boom, boom in about a 10 or 12 day period. So we get one of those, we're going to add to the snow. Unless, it's ice or rain. I mean, that's the thing, where the temperature's at. But I think we got a better shot to be a little more snow than last year, for sure.
Yeah, and we still have, about 4 weeks away, about almost 30 days until Christmas. 34, if I believe.
I'm saying
correct,
we
34.
have one, though.
And so we will, obviously, as we get closer in the next couple of weeks, we'll start having those 6 to 10 day forecasts, 8 to 14 day forecasts, and we'll be able to have a better read on what we're thinking is officially going to be happening on Christmas Day.
I'll guarantee we're going to have one. It has nothing to do with weather. Her and I are both out of town, so little jokes in the weather department there.
Oh,
nothing meteorology about that.
No,
it's
not.
Every
it's
time one
timing.
of us is gone, it's something.
Timing.
So.
Timing is everything, isn't it? Okay, anything else, Brett?
When do you think we'll get our first measurable snow?
You know what? I do
December?
think it will be December, but I do think, and all it takes is 1/10 of an inch.
Yeah.
So as he was mentioning an inch, that's what we're talking about as far as what we would constitute as a white Christmas.
Yeah.
But 1/10 of an inch measurable snowfall is all it takes. We haven't even had a trace. I think there's been just a little.
I saw some flurries.
That's all we've had, but it hasn't added up to anything, guys. So that's one of the reasons why I do think that we will probably get into the first couple of weeks of December before we actually see our first measure. So it will be rivaling one of our latest, if not the latest, snow that we've ever had here in Omaha. So I think that's definitely going to be the case.
Yeah, unless we get some, the pattern could change. It's not like we're not getting the fronts every other day. If one can catch moisture, the temperatures are right. It's not to say we couldn't get a quick inch or a dusting that might break what she's saying, but it just hasn't happened yet. And there's no real major sign of a lot of organized stuff. Now, the weather pattern and stuff changes every couple of days with our long-range models, so we'll see. But, yeah, it just hasn't really come together yet.
But everything that I'm looking at within the next about 2 or 3 weeks or so still has
warmer.
us with little precipitation.
Overall.
And, yes, and still there will be some fluctuations going above to below. So I think it's going to be at least another couple of weeks before we actually get some measurable snowfall here in town.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Yes.
How many measurables overall do you think we'll have this month?
Oh, my. Several. And the thought process on that is
a couple of big ones. I think there will be a couple of big ones.
I agree. And
I think that will add up.
When I say big one, I'm saying 5 to 7. 5, 6, and higher.
Yes, 5, 6 to 5 to about 7 inches.
And potentially a really good one if things really got going together there. But we'll wait and see on that. I think the measurable part's going to come more with these, what we call the nickel and dime stuff. We saw that last year, but it only added up to about a foot of snow, where you get the ½ inch to maybe 3 inches. You get some of those. Like I said, we've got the fronts. It goes back to, is the moisture going to be there to do that? And they may be really small little nickel and dimers, like a ½ inch to an inch.
And that's what I think we're going to see more of, are these other small, multiple little quick little squeakers that will come through with a couple of more significant,
with a lot of wind,
with a lot of wind,
temperature swing,
and more Arctic outbreaks to impact us this winter.
The pattern's
season.
really kind of setting up that way to
is.
do that. Yeah.
The person who asked that question, by the way, they said 6. That's their prediction. They said they got it too. So
I
think that's a guarantee.
They think 6
total measurable events. I'm going to go a little bit higher than that. Who is that?
It would be Jamie.
Jamie, I'm going to go a little bit higher than 6. Total
no, but
events.
she's saying total event. You think 6? She says
just measurable.
Oh, measurable. Yes, yeah, I definitely think that we.
I'm not saying 6 major snows.
I'm saying at least 2 major snows is what I'm thinking.
And then several of the little.
There will be several that will be like that. At least a ½ inch to an inch.
Yeah.
So
I'd say multiple. Over 10 total events at least, but some of those may be a ½ inch. A lot of them may be. So.
Yeah, I agree with you on that.
Okay. See, this is fun.
This one. Kay remembers 2009, 2010. Is there any possibility something like that happens?
I hope not. Kay, I really hope we don't do 09 and 2010 again. I can remember it was so cold and hit ice, I ran into the curb. It broke the bead on my tire. It's not fun when you forget gloves and you're trying to put air in your tire when it's 5 below 0. It was that. I have all kinds of stories about that year.
I just
You're glad you
don't
weren't here.
see. I've had my fair share.
Yeah.
I've worked in Denver.
That's true.
Through some blizzards,
ice storms
driven
in Mississippi,
and ice storms in the south. It's no fun. So I've covered them all, and would like to forget at least the ice events because they've been significant.
Tulsa, probably. You guys are ice capital of the world.
We got hammered one year. So and I got stuck at the station. So and even the blizzard too. So Anyway, so this being said. As we talk about some of these events, I do think it just kind of recapping all of what we're dealing with here, but I don't think that we're going to see any massive absurd.
I still think we have the moisture unless
we
the
just
pattern
don't.
changes.
It just and
really
again, this is the setup right now. The last 60 days has been our window of opportunity. The only thing that could throw a wrinkle or any kind of alteration to this would be what we ended up seeing during the early part of October. That's why we think that there's going to be a couple of good events that we're going to have come through here, some more significant snow events, but really only a couple with some very minor or small events that will continue to impact us, not only through December, January, February, but even into March and potentially early April. But there are some signs right now that we may actually go into a more cooler, drier trend going into maybe parts of March, and then we might ramp it up a little bit more in April. So so something we're going to be watching very closely, and La Nina is going to have a huge impact on this.
If it strengthens, we may be back in a month revising this forecast.
We might.
But right now, again, it's just, the pattern looks colder, but it just, moisture is really the key. You got to have moisture to get snow. I mean,
it's lacking.
Yeah.
So anyway, we want to thank everybody for your amazing questions, comments. We'll continue to keep checking them out and trying to answer them even after we wrap up this Facebook Live update. But please stay with us here on 3 News Now for all the latest forecasts with the holidays coming up right around the corner, especially not only for Thanksgiving, but going into the Christmas holidays and travel. Travel's going to be big, and obviously we'll have you covered on that. This Thanksgiving looks fantastic for travel.
One of the easiest I've ever seen.
One of the best.
The country.
Of course, you're taking off, so you get to enjoy, which you got good travel conditions, which is great news. So we want to thank you. Share, let us know. If you want to know any more information, we would be more than happy to provide it to you. But thank you for joining us this afternoon on this Facebook Live update.